Get started.
I'm Raylan Daviso. I teach students with multiple disabilities, and I teach in Stowe. I've been teaching 12 years, if you can believe that. So this is my 12th year there, and I have the pleasure of having this wonderful student. Shantae Keitlinger was my student that I had years ago, many years ago. She's 23 now. Wow, I still can't believe it. Seems like yesterday. I just had her in class. And her wonderful family, her mom, Cindy, and this is her older brother, Brandon, and her younger brother, Bryce. And they're all here tonight to share with us some very important knowledge and things that you need to know, even as a gen ed teacher, things that you need to know in working with parents with kids with disabilities, and kind of see some different perspectives. We're hoping to enlighten you a little bit on that. So we were going to just, and Shantae prepared for us some pictures that are going to be going on behind her that you can enjoy as the presentation's going on. And like I said, please help yourself to cider and treats that they brought in too. So are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. And we're just going to go through those questions that you had for your assignment. And then obviously, if you have any questions during or any comments or anything you want to share, just feel free to please share that with us. So the first thing that we need to look at is a parent's reaction to your child's disability, finding out that your child has disability and medical condition.
I think that it differs, obviously, for each individual. But when I found out, I was 4 months pregnant, and I had not been exposed to any type of disability, people with disabilities, except for when I was a little girl. My neighbor had a granddaughter who was disabled, and I just remember playing in rocks with her. So when I found out about Shantae, I was clueless about what it was or what was going to happen. And my support system with doctors and other people was very weak. So I remember one time I had known, and for some reason I just opened up the refrigerator. I was getting ice out, and I became very angry, and I threw the ice cube trays, and I was angry. And so from there it went from like anger to I was young and I was naive and I didn't know things. So this was my opinion was when I found out, I was like, she's going to be dressed in the best clothes. She's not going to have a dirty face. Her hair is going to be beautiful. And so that was my opinion of that. Well, later on, after I had her, I found out that the reason why some people have preconceived ideas because they see people in wheelchairs or whatever and their faces are dirty or their clothes might be unkept is because you're more worried about your child breathing than you are about something on their face. And so it was a real, it was a rude awakening to me to really find out what this was all about. And so one thing with parents is that our reaction to the disability goes on. It's not like a one-time reaction and then you find out and you're okay. With each step that your child is going through, you have a reaction to it. So it's not just the fact of, oh, my child has a disability. Okay, I'm okay now. It's whenever Shantae said when she was older and she was watching someone swing on a tire swing, and she looked at me and she said, Mom, I wish I could do that. As a parent, that sets you back and you have another reaction to that. Or another time when Shantae was in school and I went through denial because her other friends that were had disabilities didn't have the mental disability. Shantae has a developmental disability also along with her physical disability. I wanted her to be in class with them, learning math and all those things, but she was put into a class with children who couldn't talk and who were screaming, and I was in denial of what she could do. And so I actually took her out of school and homeschooled her during those years until I really realized like that would have been okay for her to be in that class. But as a parent, I was in denial. So when you're dealing with parents, you probably are going to get us at different phases of what we're going through with that child's disability. And also I think with the different disabilities, you might have a child who's doing fine and then you find out they have autism. And so at that stage, when your child is 4 and you think they're perfectly fine, they're going to have a different reaction than when you're pregnant with a child and you find out.
And is it okay if we share, we didn't say the disability?
Oh, sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you want Shantae
Shantae,
to?
do you want to tell us about your disability?
Yeah, I have a disability called spina bifida, and what that is when I was born, I had a hole in my back, and as a result of the spina bifida and the hole, I'm unable to feel from the waist down. So, yeah.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we have to say
And she also had hydrocephalus, which is more like water on the brain. And so because of that, the brain didn't grow, and that's why she has her developmental disability.
that. On top of that.
Yes.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Any questions on that area as far as parents' reaction?
Did you guys participate in the Walk for Babies in Akron Zoo? It was for children who were in ICU, but one of the families that did that had their daughter had spina bifida, and so I got to hear their story with that. It was pretty cool.
We did not, but I did hear about it.
I think you bring up an excellent point too, that it isn't just a one-time thing, the reaction, that it is continuing over the years. And if it's okay, can we share how many surgeries?
Sure. I've had 27 operations.
27.
Most of them have been life-threatening.
To save your life.
To save,
To
yeah.
save your life, absolutely. So 27 surgeries. I mean, if you can even imagine what that is to go through for Shantae and her family. I mean, that is a lot of time in the hospital
Yeah.
and a lot of scary stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Any other questions on that one? Comments? Okay. We'll move on. Then the next one that you need to answer is the parents' interactions with the school and their opinion of their children's educational program.
I think that Ms. Davidson is the best teacher. Honestly.
Go on.
She, in all honesty, has been the best teacher that Shantae has ever had, and we had a great experience in that area of her education, and the things that she did and I think that's another question, but she was just really great, and we've had experiences that were not good. I think that I want to be careful about how I say this, but I think that as a teacher with anything, when you're dealing with people, you have to deal with your own biases. And to overcome those things, you might have an opinion. People had great opinions about whether Shantae should have been born or not. People with disabilities of whether they should be integrated into a classroom or not. And so you need to deal with those biases. And so I think that we had issues with that, with Shantae and her disability. Also, we had issues with medical problems. Shantae, as you can see, she cannot wear shoes. It's not because I don't want her to wear shoes, but her feet, the skin on them, the doctor said no, because if her feet get rubbed down and that gets an infection, to us it's a blister, to her it could be life-threatening if that infection goes septic. So there was a teacher who insisted she wore shoes. So I tried to explain, and this seems like a little thing.
It is not a little thing. It is not. I mean, the medical explanation should have been enough, and you shouldn't even have had to give that, in my opinion. But
right.
Yes.
And so I went to the doctor, and I said, "Is there any way? Do you think she could wear shoes? Because I wanted to make sure, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And he said no. And so the teacher said, "She's not going to get a job. She's not going to be able to go into these programs. She has to wear shoes." Went back to the doctor. And he got angry. He said, "If you want me to, I will write a note for her." And so I told her. And so I said, "She can't. She just can't." So then they had a field trip, and I got a note sent home. Shantae cannot go on this field trip because there's a sign that says no shirt, no shoes, no admittance. So I had to call the place, and I called them and I said, "This is a situation." I said, "She can't wear shoes." She said, she's in a wheelchair? And I said, yes, her feet will not touch the floor. And they said, it's no big deal. So I had to go back to the teacher and say, I called, she can go, it's no big deal. So that one thing you might think is really silly, but to a parent of a child with a disability dealing with everything you have to deal with, it would have been nice not to have to have dealt
Right,
with
and then
that.
you had to take your time and energy and
Mhm.
stress over an issue that shouldn't even have to be
Right,
talked about, really. So
And-
that's unfortunate. that
right.
That would be that way. And this is a teacher of students with disabilities, correct?
Yes, yes.
Just out of curiosity, how long had they been in special ed? How long had they been teaching for?
I think quite a while. I'm not exactly sure, but they had been in it quite a while.
Sometimes it's like a power struggle.
Could be.
Yeah.
I think quite a while though, because I think I would.
Mm-hmm. And another issue that we had was when Shantae first went to this high school, we had a meeting, the IEP meeting. And so I told them, I said, Shantae has a depth perception problem. At your school, you have a ramp, but off of that ramp, you have steps. I don't know why, but there are steps going off of the ramp. I know. It wasn't designed very well.
No.
And so I said, if she goes off of those steps, she's going to die because she's going to fall down in her wheelchair, and it's very dangerous. And this was my suggestion. Could you take tape, like caution tape, different colored tape, just put it at the front of the steps, and she'll see that and know, don't go there, go this way. And so they said, oh no, we can't do that. We're going to have to get permission. It's going to cost money. So they made a deal about that. So I sat there and I let them tell me why they couldn't. And then I said, okay, then she will need an aide to be with her. And they said, no, she doesn't need an aide. I said, no, she will have an aide with her. A couple minutes later, someone left the room. A couple minutes later, literally a couple minutes later, there's no problem with that tape. We'll just get some tape and we'll put it down on the thing. And then someone else said, and yeah, and that'll help so-and-so also, since they have that problem too. And so I thought, I just didn't understand why it was a big deal. So then we had to go through this process. And Shantae went through program after program after program because the teacher just pulled her out of programs, and this is what she told me. She said, Shantae, this is after she turned 18. She said, Shantae is 18, she's an adult, she can tell me what she wants to do. Okay, if you know Shantae, you can talk her into anything. If you make it seem great, she's all about it. She's not going to say no. And so I was saying no, Shantae was saying yes, so the teacher was saying to me as a parent, she's 18, you don't have a say-so. And she went through all these programs, and it was not in her best interest, Shantae's best interest, to have that done. And so we've just had situations like that. We had situations with her going to, in this particular school, she wanted to go to football games. She wants to be a part. So we would go to the school. They have it's wonderful, lots of handicap parking spaces. They would let the students park there. So the first football game, I was like, okay. So we parked down the street and we walked to the stadium. And so then there was no seating, so we sat on the track. And I said, okay, so I just stood there the whole football game, and it was hard and I was like, that's okay, you know. So then my brother-in-law took her, and my sister took her to a game, which was he's what is he? Superintendent of a different school.
District.
And they knew him. So he got to sit on the track with a chair. They were treated very well. And so the next week I took Shantae to the game. Same thing, parked, walked up, didn't have a chair. And so I asked them, because my brother-in-law said, just ask and they'll get you a chair. And so the person said, no, I'm on track duty, I'm not getting you a chair. So I was like, okay, because I'm not a superintendent. So then we learned, like, I would bring a chair, we would park down the street, and I would carry my little lawn chair with me so that I wouldn't have to stand up. And so for the whole games. And so I would get really angry at that, for the fact that these students that could walk were parking in the handicap parking. And
Which is illegal.
exactly.
Against the law.
Right, and that it's just a chair, just a chair. But when you're walking with a wheelchair with a chair with another person over broken sidewalks and trying to get through traffic and all that, it's not a good situation. So we've had some bad situations.
So just to try to remember to look at things from a different perspective. So you might have it one way in your head that you have to have shoes on. That's the rule. That's the rule.
Mhm.
But then sometimes you have to make accommodations and make some exceptions when it's a valid case and a medical condition. I think we would all agree would be a valid case to not having to wear shoes. And as the mom had to do, she called and found out that it was in fact okay. And really, that should have been the teacher's responsibility to make that call and say to mom, no worries, it's okay, she's good to go. It shouldn't have had to be. And that's the thing that you're very good about, Cindy, is advocating for Shantae, and you always have, and you're comfortable speaking up. And I think that probably came with experience. I imagine it got easier for you as you had more experience. But there are parents that will not speak up or feel comfortable speaking up or asking for what their child really needs and deserves and should have. So that is one thing, that's worked out, I think, really well for you, is that you have spoke up. But even a person who can advocate and speak up still face these challenges. And probably our most important time, which is the high school time, because you want to set up from high school to life. So, that's true too. Could we talk about some positives? Some positives that teachers, any specific examples come to mind? What was helpful to you?
Yes, I think that teaching is the best profession, because I don't know if you realize how powerful you are and the influence that you're going to have, not just like with children with disability, but in influencing children without disabilities to be accepting. And I think one of the things that Mrs. Davidson did was, and Shantae can tell you about this, was the program that she had. Do you want to tell them about it?
Operation Connect. It was awesome. We did stuff like bean bags, I think, and I got to tell my story. And
yeah, I'm always using you.
Yeah,
making you work.
I used to have braces that I would shift, and then the leg would kick out. The doctor said I couldn't wear those anymore. So.
Yeah, we had Operation Connect was actually put on by Hetty Larlow years ago, and the person in charge of that was wonderful. And unfortunately, I think they ran out of funding for it, and they haven't done it in some time. But we were fortunate to go to that, and it was a bunch of schools came together and they did disability awareness activities. So then we put on at our actual school we called it Mini Operation Connect, and then we had a whole hallway where we had disability awareness activities set up, and Shantae and her mom were so kind and came and spoke, and I have to tell you, teachers and students would go on and what a benefit and how much they enjoyed hearing from you. So that really was nice.
And I think it allowed other students without disabilities to know what it was like for a student to have disabilities. Because if you're not, like when I was younger, when I wasn't exposed to that, I was a little bit afraid. People are a little bit apprehensive about people in wheelchairs or with mental or physical disabilities if you haven't been exposed to it. So if you do something like that in your school, I think it's wonderful, because it's great for both sides, for the children. Another really good thing was in Brandon's high school. He went to Garfield High School, and they had a coach. I think it was Coach McGee. Was he the coach that you're first under? And football coach. He played football. And they had two students with disabilities who were the water boys and girl, water boy and water girl, for years. And so they were with the football team. They did a great job. You knew that they had disabilities, but they were great. And it exposed the students to that. They were treated kindly, which, because that coach did that, it kind of made the way for the students to be kinder to the people with the disabilities. And Brandon was able, because he had a sister with a disability, to kind of tell people, hey, don't say that. You know, that hurts that person's feeling. I don't know if they don't realize it or what. And so they had a coach doing that. They had teachers doing that. They had Brandon, and Brandon even took one of the girls to prom when she was a senior, and it was really a big deal to her. And then when Brandon was a freshman, he took Shantae to one of the dances, which the girls, I think he did it for his own benefit.
No, you-
Because after that, the girls
I
were
didn't
like,
get a girlfriend until like my
oh.
junior year, so it wasn't my
So, but being exposed to that. So as a teacher, you could have programs like that. If you're a coach, you can include kids. They might not be able to play football. There's kids who would love to be playing sports. I know Shantae's friend, Jordan, always talks about how he would love to be playing sports. Well, they can't, but they can be incorporated into that to be able to do that. And it means so much to them. And the exposure of them to the other kids is really great.
Shantae, would you say for you, did you enjoy your time going into the inclusion setting?
Oh, I did.
You did? That was a time you liked?
Yeah.
Yeah. And even though maybe you weren't doing the exact same work, and maybe it was a little bit different, that was okay with you? You enjoyed the social?
Yes.
And making friends, and
Yeah.
like anyone else would?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Could you tell, Shantae, can you think of anything that teachers have done or assistants have done that have worked with you that helped you or they benefit or that you really liked?
Just like help me with understanding stuff like paperwork and
So the academics, the math, the spelling,
Yeah.
help you with that stuff? Yeah. Okay. Good. And then, anything else teacher-wise, as far as, I mean, I assume communication's a big part too,
It's huge.
and being honest and
Yes.
and communicating, keeping that lines of communication open.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think too that parents really want to be heard. I know of a person that you could clearly see that their child had a disability, but they were in a regular classroom, but they hadn't been diagnosed yet. And so the teacher was complaining, it's disruptive. So she went in and she, for some reason, I don't know the situation, but she couldn't get whatever the testing is that gets done in the school. It wasn't being done. So she was called into the classroom to watch her son. He was under the desk. She was sitting there crying as he's under the desk being disruptive. But they were saying he doesn't have a disability. It's just that problem. And so I think it's really important to communicate with the parents, to not assume that it's just the child's just being bad. And now he has been diagnosed and he is in a special class. Or to realize with parents that they're going through so much. I have a friend who has 3 boys with autism and her husband left. So she's got all this medication, all these doctor's appointments. She's got 2 teachers that are great and 1 teacher not so great calling home. And it is hard as a teacher. I understand that, and the disruptiveness in the class and getting it all settled. But if you could just understand that parents are going through so much and trying to get the best for their children, and there's a lot of pressure. It's great. Shantae's having her has opened my world to this beautiful life of people with disabilities, and it's awesome. It's awesome. But it's difficult. And if you could communicate, and another thing is the homework that you send home is the parents' homework. So so when you send home that homework, it's guaranteed the parent's going to be sitting right there doing that. So if you kind of take that into consideration, that's always nice for the parents.
Any questions on that issue?
Just out of curiosity, at what point in your education did you have her as a teacher?
fifth and sixth grade.
Yep, 5th and 6th. Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering how, like, you guys as a family deal with all of the complications and just, like, kind of staying together as a family. Because I know I'm sure that can't be very easy to kind of, like, stay together when, you know, like, something could go wrong at any time. And just, like, the disappointments with the teachers, like, I can't imagine, like, having that. I know as a student it's hard having a bad teacher, but just, like, someone that doesn't understand that has to be so difficult.
I think you just look at it in a really positive way, because I think sometimes in life you learn more from the negative than you do the positive. And so if you stay positive, and times are hard and you have meltdowns, but as a family, if you just stay positive and try to work through those things, and it goes both ways, the parent and the teachers. You know, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing teachers, because I'm not. I had the highest respect for you, and but I think that's it, and just working through, and you can use that as a time to teach your child also about, because and one of the things I want to mention real quickly is not with Shantae, but with other parents that's heartbreaking, is that when you go into the schools and you have your child being made fun of all the time, to a parent, it breaks your heart. And so as teachers, if you could stand up for them and not tolerate that, and we live in a tolerant society, but one of the things we're not tolerant is with people with disabilities. I haven't seen it, at least. And so is to not allow that negative in your classroom, or even in your hallway, or in your schools.
That's a great point. And you as a teacher, you are a role model.
Yes.
You know this. And the students are going to look to you. I mean, even at the high school age. And I totally agree with that. And I've seen a huge change at Lakeview in the 12 years. My unit of multiple disabilities was a brand new unit there. So when we started, it was really hard at first, and having the views of what are those students doing here, that kind of a thing was going on. So I worked very hard on that, and that was part of that whole disabilities awareness program, and turning that around and trying to talk to teachers about how important it is for you to model acceptance, and to not, I heard someone use this word, and I didn't say anything. Oh, no, you call them out, and you talk to them about it, and it's really important, because otherwise that just continues on into our communities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a great point. Yeah, definitely. Any other questions?
So it's not necessarily a question, but I have a comment. I have a boyfriend, and 3 of his brothers have disabilities. One has Down syndrome, one's autistic, and the other one's deaf. And to watch their family go through things in life, and the autistic one, he's 16, and he was actually on the varsity wrestling team for Orville.
Mm.
So to hear you talk about being included in the sports and everything really makes me hopeful, because I'm teaching an adaptive swim class at the Y for little kids with special needs, and I also babysit a little girl with autism, and she's 8. And special needs is such a big part of my life that I'm really grateful for you guys to be here to share your experience. So I just wanted to take the time to thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Are you going into special ed, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good. Yeah.
What's one of the most useful tactics or accommodations that you found that teachers can include in their programs or assignments?
Most helpful.
Oh. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Most helpful. I think this can be difficult, because you have, but like Mrs. Davidson says, is communication, is those notes sent home, or if you have a computer, or to not let things go until it's like, oh my goodness, I did not know this was going on. For instance, Shantae had a big project due, and the night before, she hadn't done any of it. I didn't know that, but she hadn't done it. So the night before, I had this whole list, and I'm like, what?
I got a project to do today.
Yeah, I just found out. And so I'm running to the store, and I'm like, oh.
And I think there's that you assume, the students are going to share with their parents. Well, that's not always happening, and for students with disabilities, that's also a struggle. And even for mild disabilities. And so that's where you'd want to look at accommodating with a planner, where the student, with help possibly, writes down what the assignment is ahead of time with enough notice. I'm sure the other students in the class knew about that project before the night before. Mm-hmm. I would assume. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great point. So to communicate with the parents too, either you directly, or honestly, sometimes you might feel overwhelmed and not feel you have that time. Mm-hmm. So you could help the student to communicate with that would facilitate it. So mom would know, let's check your planner, let's see what's
Yes.
going on this week.
Yes.
And then she can look at that and see what they need to do.
From a parent's perspective, I'm in an information technology class, and we're learning about these cool little different tools that we can use on the internet as far as that goes. And there's a particular website that you can lay out like your entire lesson plan for the student to go through and click on each module as it goes along. As a parent, would it be helpful to have that information ahead of time for your sake, so that you know what the schedule is before we kind of go into it, kind of like a syllabus type deal?
Absolutely. Actually, Bryce's school does that. It's called RenWeb. And so I know that when he doesn't have an assignment, it says incomplete, late, 10% taken. Yeah. So, yes, we were just looking at it the other day. That's why. So it's very helpful. And I think that if they would have had that when Shantae was in school, it would have been helpful, and then it wouldn't have been the night before. Because I was going to say, like, Shantae didn't want to do that project. So she didn't tell me about the project. So it was on her, but she was going to get the F. But like I said before, eventually that night it came back to me.
Right.
You know.
And then stressed you out.
Right.
And I'm sure stressed out
So-
Shantae. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Right.
So absolutely, yes, that
So
type
you
of
would know and you
thing.
could have prepared for it and that
Mhm.
going on. Any other questions or comments on that?
I know I'm not a part of the panel. May I say something?
You
Is that
absolutely.
okay? One thing that I would address working with students with special needs, you brought up the topic of the family environment. One thing our family during Shantae's, was it 5th, 6th grade with Dad? Around that same
Yeah.
time, Ms. Davidson, is families with disabilities have a lot of tension a lot of times within the home. Our family has been really great about minimizing that tension. But the reality is that they go through such high stress activities and events, like with Shantae, when on a yearly basis, you're like, oh my goodness, is she going to die in this surgery? Like regularly happening over and over, just high tension. And so you find that with, like my mom brought it up, this one woman with 3 children with disabilities, her husband left. That's a story of our dad. But when Shantae, before my senior year, before Shantae, around 5th and 6th grade, our dad left our family, he moved out. And so that was an incredibly traumatizing experience for all of us. And so I just want you to know that as a teacher, you have the opportunity to bring a point of peace into the life of a student. Because at home is not, like for a lot of students, home is a resting point. For kids with disabilities, home might be a point of tension and argument and fighting, not because of them, but because of the parent stress that goes into that. And so them being able to go into the classroom and you providing encouragement and speaking life and just smiling and cheering them on, that might be one of the best things you could ever do for a child with disabilities. And then also my mom was talking about this, but I want to put it into like just an easy to remember kind of phrase, but leverage your influence. Like as a teacher, leverage your influence, especially with the general population of the school. And that's one thing we saw, like Miss Davidson did it, leveraging her influence to impact the general population. Like those kids at Garfield who I went to school with, is their teachers and our coaches leverage their influence to connect them with us. And so when our perceptions and students' perceptions shifted, like I was a 3-sport athlete and I was a pretty popular guy in high school. I don't know where that went, but I was like in high school. I'm kind of known, you know. But anyway, but in high school, I was able to use that influence that I had to impact the collective student body. But it came down because a teacher took the initiative to show us the value of that student, and then we as students owned what that teacher showed us, and we passed it on to the student body.
All good points.
I actually went to school with Brandon, and he was a senior, and so I'm the freshman, and his group of friends and everyone, those kids that volunteered and they did that in the football games, those were the popular kids, and they were accepted. There wasn't judgments, and it was a really good school environment with that. And when they would walk down the halls, they're just talking to everyone, hey, what's up? And everyone, they knew your name, you knew their name. There was no judgment, and that I want to do that in my future career because I'm going into intensive special ed as well. But it was a great environment, and when you can get everyone on board like that, it's a great experience for both ends. So.
Anything else on that one? How are we doing on time? Are we okay? Okay. Okay, great. Chante, anything else to add? Except for your favorite teacher was?
You.
Oh, okay, we just gotta get that on tape. Okay, so then we'll move on to concerns about the future. So they say for parents, concerns about the future for your child with disabilities.
For parent, it's a huge, obviously, it's a huge concern. You're thinking about, am I going to be physically able to take care of this child? Am I going to be able to provide for this child? You think about group homes. What are they like, and are they going to be able to love my child, you know, the way, or provide a home for them? In the school setting, you're trying to, if you ever get into like the senior year, that area is, it's a lot of work on a teacher. I would think that because you're trying to transition them into adulthood and working. And so it's a huge job. But I think that if you work with that parent, I can't say that enough, if you work with that parent in developing like what's their personality like, what do they like to do, providing opportunities for them to volunteer in the different areas of school that they have, will really help to make that transition to go smoothly, because it's hard. It's going to be hard for the student, especially a student that really enjoys being in school and they have a good environment and they have these people who are loving them, and then they go into a different world of adulthood. It's very difficult. Shantae has a lot of disability, or not disability, she has a lot of allergies. One of them is to latex. So we went through this big thing because we had a disconnect in the school, so I had to take that on. So we went to all these different places trying to get her a job, but they all had latex there. So we had to come up with a different, and she can tell you about what she does.
Shantae, do you want to tell us what because you emailed me about it?
Yeah, with Micro Enterprise, I make blankets, and so I get to go to different art shows and sell them. And then on Thursdays, I volunteer at Akron Children's, and so.
What are your blankets? What are they made of?
Fleece.
Fleece. Okay, fleece blankets. Oh, that'd be good. And so for the holidays, you should be having some good sales coming up. Yeah. Now, can we buy those, or do you have them posted anywhere? Is there anywhere that we can?
She looked at me because I told her I'd do a website for her.
Oh.
Sorry.
Because I was just thinking we might have some customers here. But,
I do have cards with me.
You have cards? Well, we could pass on the cards. Yeah.
Business
Okay.
cards.
Maybe.
And I'll get the website. I have to now. I have accountability. I'll get it up. All right.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is a really a big time in a person's life, parent and a child. So I don't know if you could address that better of what has to be done.
Unfortunately, I think for you, unfortunately, it wasn't the best experience at that high school level, which is so important for that transition into adulthood. So it wasn't as smooth and as good as it could have been. I don't think they had the supports that they should have, and you find that once you leave high school, those supports are even harder to come by. Do you find that?
Yes.
So I think that's a big one. In the high school, it's by law that you have to get certain services and things like that. So what happens then after high school, then it's kind of harder to get those things. So I think that's a tough one to deal with. And so the future, and we kind of touched on it too, is always a concern too, because health-wise is also an issue. Your health, your family's ability to help Shantae if one of you weren't there or things like that are all parts of that. And Brandon brought up a good point about the stress at home and keeping that in mind. So those, and I remember, you were also taking care of your mother. So there could be an elderly person in the family, a close person that has health issues or issues themselves that you're helping take care of, on top of the father is not in the picture and having a child with disabilities. So you really need to take all that into, I think sometimes we get so stuck on, I've got to get this form signed by this parent, and that's all I care about right now. And I think sometimes it's just good to step back and go, wait a minute. you know, she didn't give it to me the next day. Maybe she's got some things going on. I need to step back and think about this and really take all that into account. And can we share about the faith for your families?
Yes.
So one thing for their family is faith, and faith is a very important, I would say, integral part in your family and your support. And that's something that Shantae, you know, even has worked at. Did you have a group at the high school?
No, it was at Kimpton.
Oh, Kimpton. Okay, yeah. They even had a group that she helped to organize for students that were interested in talking about religion and faith and those kinds of things. So that was a really cool thing that she did. I was proud of her about that. She's really great about going out there and like you said, she will go for anything though, but you know, she does have some interest, and when you find those interests and you can get her involved in that, it really is beneficial. But I think faith has been a big part for you guys for support.
It's been, that's the foundation of our life.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's nice too. And then that's nice to know too, I mean, and they were able to share that with me, so which was nice. And I think if you are honest and kind to families and parents, then you'll find that's probably what you're going to get in return too. I think that's a lot of it, kindness.
Yes.
Yeah. Any questions for that part about the future, the after post high school issues or future issues?
How hard is it for you as a parent to find the information that you need to find the tools for Shantae to succeed in life?
Hard to say.
My mom's computer illiterate. That's why she's like laughing. She's like, how to send an email? No, I'm kidding.
No. It's been, well, as far as the computer's concerned, yeah, I'm not very good with the computer. But as far as like the different things that they have to offer, it's been extremely difficult. It's like a hit and miss. Some people with children with disabilities get hooked into the right person, and it is awesome. They have all this stuff, and they know what's going on, and they know where to connect. And then there's some people who don't, like myself. I've had that experience. I think that Shantae's friends, her friend Jordan, his mom was able to connect with the right person and just got in there, and she is like on top of it, knows things, and I'm still, after all these years, I'll get somebody who's really great, and they get promoted. And then I get somebody else, I'm like,
and then you have to retell everything again.
Right, and then they're brand new, and so they don't know, and then you ask them questions. We're in that situation right now. And so it's very difficult. But if you get the right person to get you connected into the system, it makes it much easier. It's just a matter of getting the right person.
So as a teacher, and not as much in gen ed, I'm sure, but for special ed, you would want to have some good contacts in some agencies in the community, and you could say, oh, you know, I know so and so, and you would want to include them too in your planning, that future planning. And that is a tough one, though. Any other questions for future planning issues? And then the last question we had was your advice for future teachers. And I think we've kind of touched on that throughout, but anything else that comes to mind that we didn't share?
I think that sometimes that some parents can come across as being very dominating. And don't be afraid of them. Because sometimes you just want to back down. But when I first had Shantae, I was very passive and just kind of, oh, you know, life's great, you know, that type of thing. And I remember having a nurse say to me, I didn't ask for a pillow at the hospital, and she said to me, you're going to have to really change and be a lot more aggressive. I thought, it's a pillow. But I understand what she was saying to me, was that as a parent, you pretty much fight for everything for your child, and it's a continuous thing. You might get a little break and then you start in again. So if a parent comes across as being very dominating or hard, don't be afraid of them. It's just because it's kind of something that they've learned. And I'm actually going back to school now. And so there's a girl in my class that has a child with a disability, and she scares me because she comes across as just being really harsh, and so I kind of stay away. Well, we had to do these boxes, they're called therapeutic boxes, where we had to get together, and she had caution tape all around hers, and she shared that that's how people see her, and I was like, yep. And then she said, but inside the box, she's very caring and very loving, but she has a child with a disability, and she said that made her that way because she had to keep fighting and fighting with people, and so it developed her into this person that on the outside, that's what she appears to be like, but on the inside, she's not. So I just want to encourage you that don't feel sorry for us, please. You know, we don't need that. My life is great, and I love Shantae, and she's taught me more about life than you'll ever know. But it can be difficult at times, and so yeah, just get past that outward hardness and communicate with them.
Shantae, anything else you want to share? What were some good memories from your school experiences? Going to the dance?
Yes, going to dances and stuff.
You like that?
Yeah, like in my schools, I've had good experiences. Like Barrett was good, and Lakeview was good. But when I got to the high school age, it was not at all what I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, they didn't have door openers.
Oh, this is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
They did not have door openers.
So automatic door openers, they did not. Can you believe that?
So I
At the
had
high
to
school.
sit there at the office day after day after day after day. And I finally just gave up and said, I'm going to the principal, and did something about it. So.
And they ended up installing,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah.
Automatic door openers.
Go girl.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Mhm.
It's sad, unfortunately. It's not a good,
Yeah.
not a good thing. But I love that you spoke up for yourself.
Yeah.
And anyone else who needed that kind of a door to help get in there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, can I speak into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to prompt you.
Okay.
Shantae was also involved in choir.
Oh,
And
that's
so
right.
she was involved with the general population. And there's this one young man named Chad. It was Chad, right? Chad, yeah. That, like, even the kids within that choir setting where Shantae was in inclusion, like with the general population of the school, that he, like, really invested into him and some other students that they were really smart, very upstanding, like, students.
Uh-huh.
But they love Shantae and they eat with her. And so, like, even at the high school level, like, Shantae had those, even though it was difficult, I know those experiences were really good for you.
So eating lunch with other kids without disabilities
Yeah.
and not being at a table where you were with just kids with disabilities.
Yeah.
That wouldn't make you comfortable. I don't
No.
think anyone would want that, yeah.
Can you loop the pictures again?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
they
You
are.
guys had a question, I'm sorry.
And the dances, and what was it? I had another question. Does anyone else have a question for Shantae or mom or brothers? And Bryce is ready.
Yeah. I think also is that if you are in classes that, and you know that like a student has a child with, a sibling with a disability, like speaking for Bryce, like Bryce has spent nights in the hospital because I can't leave him at home by himself. I can't leave her at the hospital. So
Right.
he's crawled, on a chair with a blanket, and then I'm taking him to school the next morning.
Mhm.
And so
That's a good point.
there's, so if you do decide to be a teacher, I think it was said before, you are dealing with the whole family, or if you have a student with a child with a disability. And even now, Bryce there's just different things that you go through that, of course, they're going to experience too.
Mhm. Absolutely. I know what I was thinking of. Shantae, did you do the gym class that had the kids from Gen Ed that helped out? Was that at high school when you were there or no? It might be something that they developed after.
No.
So now they have a program where they have an actual class that they can get, Gen Ed students can get credit for helping out in this gym class that has a mix of kids with disabilities and kids without disabilities. And then they work on specific skills, so volleyball for however long and that kind of a thing. So again, another great way to have that inclusion experience. in an easier way, because honestly, the academics can get harder and harder and harder. And when you have cognitive disabilities, then that even makes it even more challenging to make those connections on those academics. Anything else, guys, that you want to share?
And I too, when I was going through the hallways of the high school, people would just cut me off, and I'm like, what is this? And so they would just keep walking in front of me, and then prom came, and all of a sudden this kid gives me a hug out of the blue.
You didn't know?
Didn't know. 'Cause I knew the kid, but they weren't like that at that.
It wasn't like a hug, a friend who would hug you.
No,
You knew.
not,
Right.
not at the school, but
Right.
it came out of his shell.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing to understand too, is just the perspective. And this is one of the things I remember hearing my mom talk about growing up with. I'm 6 years older than Shantae, and so I got to be a part of her whole life, really. And Bryce and I are 17 years apart. So Shantae and I have lived a long time together, and he came along later. Well, good addition. But it's just the reality that the students have to live through every day, and just understanding that, like, some people might, I'm going to use just a slur here, like look at people and be like they're a retard, or, you know, like they smell or mock them, or like act like them, you know, like mimic them, not realizing that they had to put in more work to get ready in the morning than they'll have to put in all day. That, like, it is such a chore. Like the work she has to put in just to get ready is crazy. Like pushing herself into her chair and like all this stuff, and like even the parent too. Like, my mom was saying that there's the idea when she was younger, when she was pregnant with my sister, that she was going to be the cutest baby with disabilities in the world, you know. But then Shantae had this issue with her breathing that she had to wear a monitor, because at night she would just stop breathing. And so all of a sudden it goes from being the cutest to, I hope my baby doesn't die tonight. And so just the perspective of like the life that a student like that has to live, by the time they even get into your classroom, they might have already exerted so much energy just to get there in the morning. And then the other thing I would say is I'm all about like just about destiny and encouragement and stuff like that. So you are so important.
Yes.
Like as teachers, you're so important, and Ms. Davis has said that we're really big about faith. And so I've been in ministry for years. I was a youth pastor for a few years and stuff like that. And just understanding the value of teachers in students' lives, it's so important. Like a pastor might get 40 hours a year, literally 40 hours a year with a student. The parents, I don't know, from the time the kid gets home to the time the parent gets home, they might get 3 hours a day with their student. But you get like 6 to 8 hours a day. Like that's crazy. You're getting as much exposure to a student in 1 week that a pastor will get in a year. Like that's crazy. So your voice in their life, your influence, like I talked about before, leveraging your influence on behalf of people with disabilities, like that can literally shift the worldview and the perspective of life for your school and the way they're going to look at life the rest of their life. And you have the power to do that. And so like what you're pursuing right now, thank you for like pursuing it and putting in the work to do it, like going to school and paying the bills and working jobs while you're doing all the stuff you have to do this. Like it really is, it's significant. It's very significant. So thank you for doing that. And yeah, it's good stuff.
And is there anything else we missed that you want to?
I think you covered it all.
Did you have one more?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. We were talking about it in psych class. How, as a parent, would you feel about home visits? It wouldn't be like a too regular of a basis kind of a thing, but just kind of to show you how to implement some of the skills that we learn in a classroom setting and apply them to your home life. How would you feel about us coming into your home?
I think it would be from situation to situation, that's going to differ. I personally it would be great, because any help that I can get to help my children be a better person or more independent or whatever that takes, I want that. The person I was talking about with the 3 boys with autism, it might be overwhelming for her to have someone come into their home, because it's going to disrupt.
You have to clean your house and it disrupts their
right,
life.
yeah, right.
And what is she going to do with her kids? Why she's been talking to you, and then what if one has an outburst and maybe that's embarrassing to her, or she worries about that, or she doesn't want to set them up for failure?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
That's a
think
good
it's
point.
different.
from
For
house
sure.
to house.
Mhm.
It would differ. Yeah, that's a good point. Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much. Oh my God. Really, the information is invaluable. We really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much and for allowing us to come. And I want to just emphasize what Brandon said, that it's huge, really. So thank you for teaching, and she is the best teacher.
As you can tell, I was very fortunate to work with this family and Shantae. So, and Shantae, can we share about it? No. Okay.
Oh, come on.
Okay, you can.
I have to share. When I had Shantae, we had another student named Jordan, who they mentioned a few times, and that is her current boyfriend.
I'm
So,
not happy about it. Neither is
And he also has spina bifida too.
and he also has spina bifida. Yep. So I had them both in class, so it's funny to me. Oh my gosh, they ended up together. And I told her tonight, you know, Jordan liked you back in 5th grade. And she was like, yeah, I know. Yeah, so that's cute. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you very
So thanks
much.
for sharing truth.
Yeah, thank you so
Sure.
much.
Yeah.